All right. Returned as promised. You know, we constantly keep getting these fresh new leaks that are out there about how the NSA has been working domestically under surveillance. They're constantly defending themselves, saying, that's not true, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. Well, the truth is, technically, they may be correct. But realistically, what they're not telling us is more important than what they are actually telling us. There's an article in Foreign Policy, and it's up on our Facebook page, and it's up on americasvoicenow.org. And I'll incorporate it into, or a link to it, in the description section on this YouTube video. It's on Foreign Policy, and it's called The Obscure FBI Team That Does the NSA's Dirty Work. The truth is, lost in all of the arguments that are going on about the NSA's global spying operations, the FBI has a surveillance organization that's kept such a low profile that most Americans aren't even aware that it's out there. When the media and the members of Congress are sitting there denying that the NSA is spying on Americans, they're right. In the sense that they're saying, listen, you guys are making a big deal out of this. It's not as dangerous as you think. We're only interested in international terrorism, blah, 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 blah. What they're not telling you is that the FBI is doing it for them. And they have the legal infrastructure domestically here in the United States and the technical capabilities, with a lot of assistance from the NSA, to do exactly that. They have the ability legally to operate on U.S. soil, on both foreign concerns, in other words, foreign intelligence, and domestic intelligence. And they are collecting the digital information that was funneled to the NSA through PRISM. And the truth of the matter is, everything that you thought was going on is going on, and maybe it's not just the NSA doing it, it's the NSA in conjunction with the FBI. But nobody wants to talk about that. The FBI is actually the organization that went out and petitioned the FISA court to order Verizon, to order Verizon to hand over the call records of millions of their callers. The truth is, what we have is a government that in its totality is working to, I got to put it to you this way. What's really on here is a race for data. And the reason I say that is I am very confident. When I look at this at the 50,000-foot level, and this is only my opinion, guys. Listen, I always encourage you to do your own homework and your own research. But from what I do and what I've seen and what I've read and what I've learned, the conclusion I draw from all of this is a fairly easy to follow, concept. The United States government knows that we have reached the end of the money manipulation game. They realize that the United States has lost all of its clout internationally. They've been complicit in that, and in fact. They realize that the American people are beginning to think of civil disturbance as perhaps the only means necessary to take our government back. And they are in a race against time. The race against time is essentially to make sure that they have everything under their control that they need under their control, so that when it happens, whatever it may be, whether it's domestic or whether it's a national, an international issue, whether it's a domestic issue, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's a man-made disaster, whether it's a, whatever it is, they are in a position to know who their enemies are and who they're not. They're in a race to identify and tag everyone. And the truth is, they don't really care at all about any of the issues that you think they care about. They're just using those as the excuse to sell it to you. I'm specifically addressing Obamacare here, in the sense that Obamacare is a method of securing and scraping up all the data that they need on all Americans. But nobody gets to avoid the trap this way. See, by passing a law that says everybody's subjected to it and everybody has to participate in it, they have an enormous data collection pool that can be accomplished with either the state or the federal hubs. All of that information, even if it's from a state healthcare connection, has to all go back through the DHS, has to go back through the Social Security Administration, has to go back through Medicaid, Medicare. They are finding every piece of information that they need in order to build dossiers and therefore enemy lists on Americans. And I truthfully believe, and I get it, some of you people will say, man, this guy's wearing a tinfoil hat, 3 layers thick. Okay. But when you look at the totality of everything that's going on here, you got to recognize that your government is interested in building and collecting as much data as possible about you. And the reason they're doing that is not for your benefit. There can be no positive result that comes out of that. It's no longer the exception. It's now the rule that our federal government is funneling military equipment to local police departments and police forces. It's everywhere, folks. The truth of the matter is that as we sit here right now, what's happening in our local police departments is tantamount to the United States of America becoming a militarized police state with a national police force. The article out in the NRC from the Netherlands the other day says that the NSA has infected 50,000 computer networks with malicious software. The FBI is doing it here domestically. And at the same point in time, all of our local police forces are being geared and set up for the militarization of a nationalized police force with the power and the authority and the ability to essentially control all of the nation. Meanwhile, you've got groups like Obamacare, which are collecting that which the NSA and the FBI can't get, either legally or because it's too costly or it's too difficult or it would take too long. Here's my point. We're in a race for all data on all Americans to be built, collected, and then disseminated to the appropriate groups. The reason behind that is because with that data, they can know who to target. And I firmly believe, that what our government has planned for us is so nefarious, so insidious, so dangerous, that if you are not worried about it, it's because you don't want to be worried about it. They are pumping, literally, these MRAP vehicles, which are mine-resistant armored patrol vehicles. They are pumping these things into cities and counties around the country. They cost $500,000 a piece, but they're coming back from Iraq, they're coming back from Afghanistan, and they're dumping them out on the American communities. The cities are using the excuse to say, well, we need them because we need them for when we serve warrants. Well, come on now. I mean, really, is America, domestic America, that dangerous that when you go to issue a warrant for failure to show up in court over a nickel bag that you've got to show up with an MRAP? The truth is, Even the ACLU, who's normally on the side of complete and utter liberalism, is out there criticizing it. And they're saying this is definitely nationalization and the militarization of the United States of America in the police force. You've got the NSA collecting data on Americans, the FBI collecting data on Americans, Obamacare vacuuming up vast mountains of information about Americans and then giving that to the FBI and the NSA to throw into their dossier vaults. And then you've got simultaneously the buildup of a militarization system in the United States that would make any police state dictator rub his hands together with glee. You've got the banks applying pressure on Americans, essentially vacuuming up the resources of America by boom and bust cycles. I mean, where's the 401k that you used to have? What's the value of that today? In order for, when I worked on Wall Street, and I did for a couple of years in New York, in order to work on Wall Street, there's an old phrase out there that in order for somebody to make money, somebody else has got to lose money. And so if you've ever had an investment where you purchased it at price X and it's gone down and goes up and up and down and up and down and up and down, and invariably the end result is that the small-time investor almost always gets hosed. You know why? Because, one, the people that are hosing you have inside information you'll never have. And two, they've got the ability to actually move the market in the direction that they want it to go because they own so many shares. So by selling, they can drive the market down. And, while the left hand is selling, the right hand is buying. I mean, it's a game, folks. Meanwhile, the banks are trying to force you into investing and out of saving because it's another way to apply pressure to get, to vacuum up the last tidbits that are left out there of the American resources. You've got the EPA at war with landowners. You've got the EPA at war with all of the energy systems in our country that actually functionally work. Meanwhile, we're spending taxpayer money on boondoggles like wind and solar power that have zero hope of actually meeting our energy requirements. You've got a president who says, under my plan, electric costs will necessarily skyrocket. And I posted a story up this morning on our page that over the last few years, our energy pricing in the United States of America for electricity has increased by 42%. They're shutting coal plants down. I just talked the other day about how the Tennessee Valley Authority is shutting down a whole bunch of their coal production plants and coal energy plants. Well, guess what? When you take that amount of electricity out of the system, something else has to make up for it. And when there's a shortage of something, what happens? The price rises. These are fundamental requirements and these are fundamental principles of, of free markets. And not even free markets. Supply and demand. If the supply is down, the price goes up. If the supply is voluminous, the price drops. Well, if you're going to necessarily squeeze down the amount of energy that can be produced by cutting out the coal plants, which happen to be a significant percentage of our electrical generation, then what happens? The price goes up. Another way to vacuum more revenue from the American people. Make them more beholden on the government for entitlements, for energy subsidies. I mean, all of these things conspire collectively to make us look and say, wow, taken on their own, one thing, can be made to look like you're wearing a tinfoil hat if you make the accusation that there's some nefarious purpose behind it. But by the other side of the fence, if you step back and you look at it in its totality, I mean, it's not just a lone house out in the middle of the woods. It's clearly an entire city. But you couldn't see that from standing inside the house. You just think, well, I'm in a house. And I'm told that this is the only house in the woods. Get up at 5,000 feet and you can see you're not the only house in the woods. You're part of a community. A community that is designed and geared to essentially subjugate America under a terrible, terrible police state. I know there's plenty of people out there who will reject this argument completely and say that is not where we are headed at all. I understand that. I can't change that thinking. But when you sit here and you look at what is happening in our country, it is undeniable that we have reached a point where government is no longer operating in our best interests. Government is no longer here to serve its fundamental purpose. The fundamental purpose of government, let's remember what that is. It is for the protection of the liberties and the freedoms of its citizens. If you believe that this government is actually doing that, then either you are a beneficiary of it in some way, shape, or form, the tyranny that they're incorporating into our society, or you are willfully ignorant. And I say willfully because there's no way that this can be a complete and utter surprise to you. You're told, trust us. We're working towards peace. We're working towards your security. We're working towards the idea that Americans can be held, or protected from all of these international tragedies. But the truth is, I think our worst enemy is our own government. I think the risk that you have of being killed by a domestic or an international terrorist organization is infinitesimal. I do know this. While we are hearing our politicians tell us they've got everything under control, I think what's really happening is that while they're sitting there telling us that everything is under control and we are safe, the truth is they're working against us in the most egregious manner possible. I'm reminded, of the adage of Patrick Henry's statement where he says, "Why are we standing here arguing about, gentlemen cry peace, peace, but there is no peace? What are we waiting for? The battle's already been joined. The next noise we hear will be the resounding clash of arms coming down from the north. And our brethren are already on the battlefield. Why stand we here debating these issues?" Jefferson came out and made a very clear statement. Your government tells you that we have to take away your ability to be discerning and to be responsible for your own safety and your own security. That ultimately the power of government should rest with those who are smarter than you, know more than you. Well, Jefferson made that very clear in 1820. Now, remember, in 1820, you're talking about a nation that had already been in place for 30 years, right? In other words, from the signing of the Constitution, or the ratification of the Constitution, and much more than that if you look all the way back to the founding in 1776. And here's what he said: I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of the society but within the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power. He wrote that in a letter to William Jarvis in 1820. Let me read it to you again, and then I want you to think about it for a second. I know of no safe depository of the ultimate powers of society but the people themselves. And if we don't think them enlightened enough to exercise their control with wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform them by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power. And yet, everywhere you look, government is not trying to educate you and inform you of your mistakes by educating you about what the real issues are. In fact, everything that we hear shows that they're hiding the truth from us. Everything is negotiated now in secret. Only Congress can know. Only the NSA can know. Only the FBI can know. Everything is a secret. Well, how does that work to inform their discretion by education? You see, it works in the tyrant's best interest that everything is a secret. The truth of the matter is, anytime government tells you that it has to do this or that in secret, it's against your best interest. And there's no denying that. John Adams was very wise about that issue. He said that when you have a constitution of a government, once it's been changed away from freedom, once that aspect of the Constitution has been voided out, it can never be restored. Liberty, once lost, is lost forever. And I've got to tell you, at the rate we're headed right now, we're really not in a position where we can adequately say we have not lost it already. It's amazing to me that we have actually not recognized the fact that our liberty is already taken from us by elitists who believe that secrecy and doing things on your behalf, or at least allegedly on your behalf, without really notifying you about what the implications of that are so that you can make a decision that involves you, I got to tell you, it's disturbing to say the least, because our vision is for you to be free, right? To continue to develop your own, for your own benefit, to be in charge of your own destiny, to be self-sufficient, self-reliant. And everything that government is doing works against that. John Adams once said that it's been my hobby horse to see rising in America an empire of liberty. Now, he said this in 1786, which is kind of interesting because he's talking there about today. And listen, and you'll know why in a second, because he actually references 200 or 300 millions of free men without one noble or one king among them. In other words, his vision is now. But listen to the difference in what he was hoping for there to be and what there actually is. John Adams, in a letter to Count Sarsfield in February of 1786, here's what he said. It has ever been my hobby horse to see rising in America an empire of liberty and a prospect of 200 or 300 millions of freemen, without one noble or one king among them. You say it is impossible. If I should agree with you in this, I would still say, let us try the experiment and preserve our equality as long as we can. A better system of education for the common people might preserve them long from such artificial inequalities as are prejudicial to society, by confounding the natural distinctions of right and wrong, virtue and vice. So think about that for a moment, because what essentially he's saying is that if you utilize education and information for the masses of people, granted, it's an experiment in liberty, but the system of education, if it's properly exposed, if all that goes on is really capable of being perceived and understood by the people, that the natural inclination will be for them to protect and control that which has now morphed into controlling us. We've lost, however, the ability to discern and have general knowledge among us so that we recognize and see our own plight. Part of it is willful on the part of many Americans, but also a lot of it has been fostered upon us by government, who really truly wants to rule behind the curtain, so to speak. Right? In other words, it's the old thing from The Wizard of Oz. Nobody gets to see the Great Oz. No how. Nobody gets to see it behind the curtain. The truth is, we don't really, everything is done in secret, and therefore we are not able to have the general knowledge that is necessary for most Americans to be able to have realistic input. And our educational system is actively working to destroy critical thinking skills that would be necessary in order for us in our society to recognize, evaluate, and formulate a position and an understanding on what's going on. Liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people, who have a right, from the frame of their nature, to knowledge, as their great Creator, who does nothing in vain, has given them understanding and a desire to know. But beside this, they have a right, an indisputable, unalienable, indefeasible divine right to that most dreaded and envied kind of knowledge. I mean of the character and the conduct of their rulers. Boom. And what is it that we don't know about our rulers? Boy, oh boy, oh boy. The simple truth is, that sums it all up. Liberty can't be preserved without general knowledge among the people. They have a right, based on the framework given to us by our Creator, to have that understanding. And our Creator doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't do things in vain, right? And we have a desire to know. But even beyond that, we have a right to know. And according to Adams, an indisputable, unalienable, indefeasible divine right to that most dreaded and envied kind of knowledge of the character and the conduct of our rulers. Boy, oh boy. That brings in the argument that if we really had that kind of knowledge, that would come from a source outside of the character and the conduct of the rulers themselves. Who would that be? The press, the media. Their role is to keep you and I educated and informed, to give us that indisputable, unalienable, indefeasible divine right to the conduct and the character of those who essentially now rule us. Unfortunately, we've abandoned that as a principle. Whether we've done it willfully or whether or not it just happened to be the way it worked, I can't say. I suspect that, there's been a lot of pressure applied from the rulers themselves. But I can tell you this. Ultimately, with everything that is happening around us, the FBI, the NSA, the militarization of the United States of America, the manipulation of our monetary supply, the vacuuming up of the vast resources of America into the hands of a few, whether those are bankers or politicians or a collection of all, that doesn't bode well for us. And again, I'm brought back to the same statement that over and over and over again I have reiterated. The people of the United States of America must rise up and be counted. We must be fearless and fierce, and we must be courageous. We must speak out even when our voices shake. We must fight back and take this country back from the hands of those who have become our tyrannical abusers. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle our fourth and final topic, the race to militarization and marking the domestic enemies of the United States of America and how they're accomplishing that. It's frightening, but it's true. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. If you have an opportunity, you can click on the like button if you're a member of Facebook. If you're not a Facebook user, that's okay. You can still go there and read all the articles and the stories we post. You can read the comments from some of our listeners. We encourage you to do that. We want you to see some of the things that we talk about so that you can educate yourself. And, we take the time to, or I should say I take the time to go out there and find stories that I think are important for you to see. The stuff that the Ministry of Propaganda either isn't telling you about or, isn't really wanting you to see. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now.